Welcome back to my channel, Star Booze.
Imagine finding out that someone is abusing your television persona without authorization. Now consider the studio that is the owner of the show is aware of it and is assisting that them. Max Baer Jr. had to deal with that in 2013. He believed he owned, for 23 years, Jethro Bodine's sole rights. He would invested millions creating a company empire surrounding it. However, a mysterious everything changed with discovery. What subs would ruin his aspirations. If he had been hidden can result in a legal dispute that no one can win. Anticipated, the final Beverly Hillbilly More Than Money was about to be lost by the star. December 4th was Max Baer Jr.'s birthday. Oakland, California, 1937. His coming wasn't a typical birth. It was the beginning of a life influenced by celebrity, pressure, as well as tragedy. Max, his father Senior Baer, was already well known. He was the champion heavyweight boxer of Thule, renowned for his flamboyant fashion sense and strong blows. Mary Ellen, his mother Sullivan, introduced Irish ancestry to the simple name appeared in the news reports, and Max Jr. was born into a world with tremendous expectations on shadows. His world had been won by his father only 3 years prior to Max Jr.'s title was created. That triumph, and all that followed it, hovered over the household as a cloud. Max Jr. was a child growing up in the Bay Area, observed the joy and the sadness that went everything with his father. It would influence his perception of the world and himself, but there was heartache beneath the applause. In 1930, August 25th, Max Baer Sr. in San Francisco against Frankie Campbell. Francisco. The game took a sad turn. The following morning, Campbell passed away. His brain had been shattered inside his skull. The information was so startling that they plagued boxing for many years. Baer Sr. faced accusations of manslaughter and suspended for a year. However, the penalty couldn't equal the suffering. He endured pain, began smoking, experienced nightmares, and was never the same. He started crying when he mentioned it. Max Jr. watched his father grow up, bear this guilt. He was aware that their notoriety was bound to a lethal blow. That evening was gone. Wounds that molded Max Jr.'s personality. It made him benevolent, but it left him searching for a life apart from his sad celebrity. The origins of his family made him feel even more burdened. His father's dad was a Jew from Germany. His mom was Irish Catholic. During the 1930s and 1940s California, the Bears stood as a result. Out the Star of David was worn by his father. On his trunks he took delight in his Jewish side during a period of hostility. Jews were powerful. However, as he did, some questioned if he was sufficiently Jewish. The Bears would have been subject to Nazi legislation, been perceived as Jewish. That idea tormented me. Then when Hitler came to power, at home his mother adhered to Irish Catholic customs. Living two powerful cultures occupied their home. Growing up between them, Max Jr. torn but proud. He frequently selected roles that mirrored this emotion. Person Ashwa was not really at home since DP felt the same way down. He wasn't his family's first to pursue Hollywood dreams. Buddy Baer, his uncle, demonstrate what was feasible. At age 68, Buddy had participated in 66 professional fights. He took home 59 of them, eliminating 53 rivals. He challenged Joe Louis for the title twice. He came close to winning in 1941, but 8 concluded with disqualification. When boxing is done, Buddy appeared in at least 17 motion pictures. He featured in 1951's Quoties and Jack and 1952's The Beanstalk. He also showed up during the 1950s and 1960s on television. Observing Buddy's accomplishments gave Max Jr. hope. It demonstrated to him that there was a path to emerge from the shadow of boxing, that charm and strength might produce a new road. The narrative of Max Baer Jr. begins long before he rose to fame on television. When he was at Christian Brothers High School, he wasn't simply skilled in one thing, Sacramento. Athletics. In many ways he was amazing. He obtained letters in 4 different sports. In addition, he took home the junior championship at the Sacramento Open Golf Tournament not once, but twice. People were compelled to take note, and his story didn't end there. Success in golf. In 1968, he collaborated with the renowned Charlie Sifford and won the Andes Pro-Am competition, San Diego Open for Williams. That triumph was not only about sports, it sent in a time when golf is still found diversity difficult. Max keeps showing himself just similar to his dad, the legendary boxer Max Baer Sr., the champion, and his uncle Buddy Baer, a former boxer and performer. Something that most people are unaware of is that Max's first time performing didn't take place in the United States. In 1949, at the age of 12, he had an appearance on England's stage. The play was The Three Bears and Goldilocks, and it occurred in the well-known Blackpool Pavilion for a California boy. Performing in British theatre was as distant as Hollywood as it comes. However, this early exploration revealed that Max was willing to take chances. He had no fear of factually walking onto a new stage. Prior to Hollywood's interest, Max served his nation. Late in the 1950s, he was employed as a medical tech in the Gunter Air Base for the U.S. Air Force Alabama Force Base. He discovered disciple accuracy and the ability to manage pressure. He once informed pilots that he weren't capable of shining their footwear. Han never lost sight of his origins and always treated people with respect who participated in warfare. His assistance was recognized on the Achievers Wall at the Heritage Hall for Air Force enlisted people. Following, Max left the military and moved to Santa Clara University. There, he received a Business Administration degree and even received a philosophy minor. That blend of sensible and practical, he was shaped by his studies in ways that most people never saw. He might have been referred to as Jethro, that despite his lack of intelligence, the farm lad, he had a skill and a keen mind throughout his life. For commercial purposes, that schooling was beneficial to him. Later on, particularly when he started directing and producing, his career in professional acting began in Warner Brothers. 1960. He was employed. Difficult to play minor roles in programs like Rick Surfside, 677 Sunset Strip, Cheyenne, and Hawaiian Eye. These positions boosted his self-esteem. He discovered Thigh in 1962, and he was prepared for his mojo break. That disruption was brought on by the Beverly Hillbillies. In 1962, Max took in Jethro Bodine's part. He is 6 feet 4 inches. Fit the component flawlessly. Viewers adored his silly charm. The performance lasted in a season beginning on September 26, 1962, to March 23, 1971. There were 274 episodes in all, 168 in color, 106 in black and white. At its height, the show's rating was 39.1, establishing it as the most seen program in the Maraca. However, behind the scenes, things weren't as intelligent. Max only earned $500 in the first season, per episode. Even afterwards, reruns generated as little as $90, and occasionally only $40 on the sixth. The actual funds were allocated to the studio, and the person who created the show, Max Baer, did more than merely portray Jethro on the Beverly Hillbillies. He dressed up as well as Jethro's twin sister, Jethro Bodine. 11 episodes featured Jethro Shoes, a tall woman who spoke deeply, which added to the humor because Baer was 6 feet 4. The creators were unable to find a woman with that much height, so Baer donned a wig and dress. Henning, Linda Kay, daughter of the author of the show, supplied the voice of Jeff. Initially, Baer was sexist. He was concerned about portraying a woman that might harm his career. Later, he revealed when the producer inquired as to if he said, any problem playing a girl. He merely wanted to know if it would be beneficial in his professional life. He acknowledged that the part was insipid. His appearance as Jethro deceived even his own brother, who failed to acknowledge him on the screen. Fans were so interested that letters were sent to the show questioning if Jeth was a woman or a man. The burst performance demonstrated his versatility. However, it further connected him to the Bodine's image, which makes it more difficult for him to release yourself. In 1971, when the program concluded, Baer's problems started. Hollywood called help but think of him as Jethro. No one would hire him for 3 years. Hellitter stated that he accepted the position for both the work and the money. However, following the performance, he understood that he was essentially unemployed, would have to, if he wanted to work, make the piece himself. Thus he moved on making movies. He wrote in 1974, starred in Mon County and produced Line. The movie only cost $100,000 to make, but took home more than $35 million. Even then he was followed by the Jethro Shadow. His tale became a well-known illustration of how Hollywood's typecasting made disparate professions. Baer was astute and tenacious, yet he had to struggle for every opportunity. Ultimately, he just in front of the camera because 2 acting jobs remained unattainable. Baer is today 87 and the final main cast member still Olivia. Beverly Hillbillies member, Ellie Mae, was portrayed by Donna Douglas, passed away in 2015. After her death, Baer became the last connection to the Clampett family's founding. He frequently discusses what it means to be the final person standing. He recalls his co-stars with affection and is moved by the enduring affection that viewers have for the program. However, there is also sadness. Following after Douglas's passing, Baer remarked, all the performers, producers and all those involved in the show, he's no longer there. The last man standing is me. If you haven't seen some of those shows, laugh, you must have been quite odd. Individual. Their level of slapstick was comparable to Chaplin. In 1974, Max Baer Jr. made a startling move. Hollywood. He produced, authored, and appeared in the grim film Mon County Line, movie about the South's rural areas. The spending plan was a little more than $100,000. When large studios were spending millions on films, people believed Baer was insane. However, what actually occurred, what came next, was incredible. The movie produced over $35 million in box office receipts as well as in rental properties. That's more than 350 times the spending plan. It turned into one of the most profitable 1970s motion pictures. Baer had demonstrated to the world that a tiny film may defeat Hollywood's titans. Feeling proud of that accomplishment, Baer pushed it in 1975. He directed, wrote, and produced them. While he has never served as a director before, he was no longer merely acting. He was in charge of everything behind the scenes as well. The movie adhered to his fashion stories from the rough South with genuine feeling. Baer demonstrated that Montcantaline wasn't merely a chance. He was able to manage each step of the filmmaking process and still tell compelling tales. Then, in 1976, with Odie, Baer transformed Hollywood once more to Billy Joe. He produced, authored and helmed the movie. However, what caused it to his notion to base it on a hit was unique. Bobby Gentry's song, nobody had taken any action that before. It was shrewd. Individuals knew the song already. They were interested to learn the backstory. The strategy worked so successfully that it's commonplace now for record labels to utilize song titles for movies. However, Baer initiated it back then. Everything. Deep themes were also addressed in the movie, such as private family information and the burden of the opinion of society, demonstrating that even astute marketing could result in major narrative. Baer's work did not end with movies. In 1991, he demonstrated his commercial acumen. He left after ABC won $2 million in court. The dispute centered on the movie rights to Like a Virgin, a popular song by Madonna. Baer was attempting to transform the song into a movie, but ABC interfered. He didn't give them the victory. His triumph sends a message to Hollywood. Baer should not be messed with when it comes to commercial transactions. The same Baer took another risk this year. He struck a significant license agreement with CBS. Through this agreement, he acquired the Beverly characters and name of the Hillbillies. Jethro in particular. Baer had a dream about transforming that into a series of hotels, casinos, and dining establishments. He envisioned BBQ sauces, slot machines, and motels with a theme and the Hillbillies brand. It sounded like a gold deal. Mine, but it would ultimately result in more difficulties than he could have imagined. Baer placed his words were not all that clear. He spent around $2 million in an attempt to construct his kingdom of hillbillies. He made the payment, CBS royalties for each BBQ, for slot machines. By 2014, he spent at least $1, according to lawsuits. Million, perhaps even $1.9 million, attempting to realize his vision. However, things continued to go awry. CBS produced additional bargains that, according to Baer, destroyed the worth of what he had constructed. His aspirations for his business began to fall apart. The center of the issue was Baer's conviction that he had Jethro's sole rights for businesses in the hospitality industry. No, he thought, the character could only be touched by one person. However, in April 2008, a brand new grill opened that established itself in Des Moines, Iowa. It was initially known as Jethro's Barbecue. At first view, it appeared to be simply another neighborhood eatery. However, beneath the ribcage and the term pulled pork was one that supporters of old television was unavoidable. The name Jethro wasn't a coincidence. Gorelman Bruce, the individual in charge, had constructed the charm of the entire restaurant and the Beverly Hillbillies theme, one of the most popular sitcoms in America. There was just one issue. Baer Max, the actor who portrayed Jethro Bodine, was Jr. and who was authorized to utilize that the name and likeness of the figure, had no notion that this was taking place. Jethro's Barbecue took off quickly. Although the food was delicious, it was memorable because of the concept. It seemed as though the sitcom had arrived to existence. The logos, the walls, and even the names of the foods on menus. Everything grounded clients of the Beverly the Hillbillies. Jethro's BBQ quickly expanded from on a restaurant to 8 different sites. The company made appearances on shows such as Man vs. Food and Addendum to the most manly eatery in the Men's Health magazine, Midwest and the Discovery Channel. However, as the money and celebrity came in, so did the storm clouds. Baer, who had previously invested about $1 million to create his own casinos with the Hillbillies motif and deities, was taken aback. They were violating his rights, and his dreams were being taken, with no compensation, with expertise. This was more than just items shown on a sign. The barbecue at Jethro's had woven the soul of the Beverly Hillbillies. The advertisement, the setting, and the cuisine. Everything depended largely on the sitcom's heritage. Baer's attorneys contended that the motif of the restaurant had depleted Jethro name's worth. He had been investing a lot of money and working for years to establish his own empire of hillbillies. However, currently, because of Jethro's BBQ, his intentions were going down. The marketplace was already brimming with the subject he had wished to possess. The most startling turn of events wasn't from CBS, but from the eatery. In 2008, when Jethro's BBQ was discovered by CBS, they kept it a secret by exploiting the show's brand. CBS struck a covert agreement alongside Gorelman. This agreement allowed theater continued to run as long as a few menu names were modified. Baer failed to locate out for 5 years about this transaction. By the damage was then done. December Max Baer Jr. sued CBS in 2014. He filed a lawsuit containing 5 main allegations: violation of the agreement, meddling with potential financial gain, deception, conversion, as well as an appeal for declarative ruling. The altercation wasn't. Everything began with a license agreement. In 1991, Baer thought that arrangement was granted him the sole authority to utilize his well-known Jethro figure for the Met hotels, casinos, and dining establishments. hadn't only have huge dreams, he took action. He paid CBS and threw in more than $1 million, slot machine earnings, barbecue sauce, and further endeavors related to the event. However, Baer discovered in 2013 that altered everything. CBS had taken exclusive agreement with Jethro's Barbecue, an Iowa chain of restaurants utilizing the Shell's trademarks. Since 2008, that agreement was made. The eatery behind Baer's back continued to use the Jethro name. The Baer suddenly exclusive rights appeared useless. The scene was prepared for an intense court case. Baer's lawyer, John Frick, made a strong impression. He said Baer had not been informed. He referred to as CBS's confidential agreement with of the worst settlements is Jethro's BBQ. I've never seen agreements before, according to Price. The 1991 agreement was evident. Baer was the only one with the authority to make money off of the Jethro Bodine Persevere enterprises with a theme. However, when CBS discovered in 2008 that Jethro's Barbecue was profiting, they failed to safeguard buzz rights. They cut their own deal instead. With the eatery. This is what Fry stated. Stole Baer's potential profits and ruined his licenses with. He portrayed CBS as enormous. Ready to turn on its allies in order to make a swift settlement, leaving Burkott off guard following years of investment. The case against Baer collapsed in August 2015. 4 were dismissed by Judge Dilla Corral-Lyons among his 5 allegations: violation of agreement, meddling, deception, and transformation. Just the declaratory. The plea for judgment was granted. The magistrate said Baer's grievance didn't demonstrate that he had the rights he asserted. Frick maintained that the decision denied Baer any opportunity. At restitution, he maintained that CBS had no authority to negotiate with third parties without Baer's consent. However, the judge refused to move. She stated, "The issue you have is that the complaint fails to offer for any of your claimed rights." Baer's legal battle was coming to an end, and it stopped permanently in February 2017. The Baer's last claim was rejected by the judge. The accusation of breach of contract. That decision destroyed Baer's last hope. The court said that even if Baer's rights were, there was no evidence that he lost money because Jethro's BBQ and the CBS contract could only observe as the eatery continued utilizing the components of the show. He stated that his rights were rendered useless by the settlement. Baer left the courtroom after years. Defeated. What hurt the most was with that covert agreement with Jethro's Barbecue actually did. It released the eatery from needing to give Baer money following invests totaling around $2 million, and after years of labor, Baer's rights, nobody desired it. In his own words, Nora Starrant would think about collaborating with him since the barbecue at Jethro's already had the green light. The marriage of Max Baer Jr. to at the top, Joanne Kathleen Hill, started off his notoriety. He first noticed her in 1965. Image displayed on a billboard near Sunset Boulevard. A romance began at that moment that went by quickly. They got married in secret. 1966. Only family members and close friends were as Jethro rode high, the Beverly Hillbillies Bodie, and his face was familiar to America. For 5 years, the couple made an effort to make it work. Baer wished to have children. Hill Ananethalis was concentrating on heriting profession. That distinction pulled separating them. They got divorced in 1971. No kids were present. Later, Baer acknowledged that he didn't believe he could be that his own father had been that way. His only marriage was the one. The division signified not only the conclusion of a relationship, but a watershed in Baer's private life. After several years, Baer's name reappeared in the headlines for quite another purpose. He was 71 years old and living with a 30-year-old penthouse model is called Cherry Rhodes, the age that it was separated by more than 40 years. Individuals conversed. The partnership dissolved. January 2008 saw Rhodes take her personal life at their Lake home Tahoe. After locating her, Baer dialed 911. She was removed from life support a few days later. The tragedy had a lengthy to do it. Displayed Baer's attractiveness as well as mayhem that frequently encircled his private sphere. The addition of Baer's familial history to the burden he bore. His sibling, at age 68, James Manny Baer, passed away in 2009. Maudie Marion Baer, his sister, was born in 1943 or 1944, has not participated in the public view. Following their dad, boxing Max Baer Sr., the champion, passed away from a 1959 cardiac attack, the family broke and Max Jr. sought fame. James's life was more subdued. Marty made the decision to privacy by 2025. Max Jr. is still Thefenal public. Connection to the Bears moniker, My the Last Private Tie, now in her 80s though that formerly well-known family. Later Bezier saw a man molded by treachery, as well as loss. He started to carry a 9mm loaded, a black fanny pack with a Glock. Additionally, he held other guns at his Lake Tahoe home. House. He spoke candidly about safeguarding grotting himself from punks, intruders, and muggers. Legal disputes, particularly with CBS, regarding the name of the Beverly Hillbilly, fed his. In fact, he made a joke about placing he had enough lead to sink him. His A-man was depicted in words as someone wooth to everyone was against him. Living Beckham's Haven in Lake Tahoe at age 69, Baer led a solitary life. Resident him for his eccentric attire. Voluminous red and black sweatpants, windbreak, sleeveless shirts, and Ugg boots. He ate by himself. He played golf by itself. His home was crowded with recollections of his family and profession, and it served as his stronghold. Baer possessed 3 hair transplants, beginning in the 1970s. To match his hair, he colored it jet black, thin mustache. He clung to the glance. To the picture that fans recalled. The tale of Max Baer Jr. is Aminger's severance, annoyance, and a tenacity that never wavered. His net estimated to be worth $50 million in 2025. Getting rich wasn't an easy feat. Following participating in the Beverly Hillbillies was typecast. Numerous doors slammed, but Baer wouldn't give up. He transitioned to producing and guiding Mon County Line, his 1974 film, only $225,000 to produce. It brought in more than $19 million for the. It maintained the record for the top-grossing movie for every dollar spent, prior to the Blair Witch. That record stood. In 1999, the project was born. Baer continued after that. He obtained the CBS's permission to utilize the Beverly Hillbillies logo for slot machines and casinos machinari as well as eateries. It was an excellent move. He even made an attempt to open a wall casino with a Beverly Hillbillies theme. There would have been an exact duplicate of Granny's Jethro's 24-hour rib broth and the Shotgun Shack joint. Local opposition and legal battles hindered his progress, but his investments in licensing and real estate agreements maintained accumulating wealth. Baer in 2005 encountered a conflict that came considerably closer to his. The movie Cinderella Man by Ron Howard. Baer's father was painted, Max Baer, heavyweight boxing champion, as a cold-blooded villain. Senior Baer Jr. Coldn single quotes to endure it. He appeared on television and broadcast repeatedly defending the name of the father. He clarified that his father's guilt plagued him following the Frankie Campbell passed away in Thuring. Senior Baer has dreams about it that lasted the remainder of his life. It was his way of clowning in the ring. Attempted to manage the guilt. Observing his father was made into a cartoon antagonist caused Baer Jr. to cry. He put up a fierce fight. To correct the record. Motivated by a strong desire to safeguard his father's single quotes as recalled. By 2025. The final member of the main cast to remain is Baer, a Beverly Hillbillies member. They garnered more than 60 million viewers at one point. For 2 years, it was America's most popular series. Years in a row. Carries Jethro Bodine in the history of television. But as the final one is bittersweet, his co-stars Donna, Irene Ryan, and Buddy Epson all gone. Douglas Baer by itself. Baer, the responsibility of maintaining the show's keeping the legacy alive. Fans continue to want hissin and reminisce about the Clampetts. Baer is often reminded that he's his final surviving connection to a program that influenced television. Baer, who is 87, is still battling to gain recognition for more than Jethro even. Though he was a successful businessman and filmmaker, that character's shadow went after him. Once, he stated that when he turned 50, he was roughly as much indement as cancer. Thus, he chose to use Jethro's picture, granting a slot machine, license casinos and machines. However, his vision of the entire Beverly Hillbillies casino was retained. On encountering obstacles, zoning disputes, delays and lawsuits, the strategy never entirely came to life. Baer has acknowledged how it hurt him a lot to be typecast, yet, he continues to push. He wants everyone to see that he was not just a sitcom star function. He still desires respect. He continues to fight for it.